for the Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. We extend our welcome to those here in the room with us, as well as to anyone online. We'll begin the meeting this evening with a roll call of the commissioners. We excuse Commissioner Littman, who had a pre-planned absence. So, Commissioner Exton.
Here.
Commissioner Retzlaff.
Here.
Commissioner Scott.
Here.
Commissioner Colson.
Here.
And Commissioner Wickstrom is absent. And I'm Jim Birch, and I will be conducting the meeting this evening. I think most of you have had experience with this before, so I think we can leap right in. We will begin this evening with some unfinished business, which is item number 202-300-645-CU-MSP, Good Life Farms. And we will turn the time over to staff. Ms. Brending.
Chairman Birch and
Yes.
staff person. Really quick, I just wanted to say that even though I wasn't here at the last meeting, I have reviewed all of the provided materials, and I feel confident that I'll be able to make a decision.
Thank you, Commissioner Exton. Noted.
Commissioner Birch,
Yes.
as I, the same.
Thank you, Commissioner Colson. Also
Commissioner
noted.
Birch? Commissioner Birch?
Yes.
The same goes for me.
We were short-staffed at the last meeting. Thank you, Commissioner Retzlaff. Ms. Brending.
Chairman, Commissioners, Project 2023-00645 CUMSP is a conditional use and master site plan application for a club, lodge, or social hall for farm-related events. The application was heard at the previous hearing on July 13th, and some of you were not in attendance. So I will give a brief overview of the application and a discussion from what occurred at the hearing last month, along with some information on some additional exhibits that were submitted. The property is located at 5600 West Beacon Light Road and consists of approximately 20 acres in the rural urban transition district. 4 different types of outdoor-only events are proposed with the original proposal, including 20 farm dinners, 20 farm nights, a pumpkin patch on the weekends in October, and 10 private event rentals. No outdoor lighting is proposed except for decorative string lightings. Up to 2 speakers were proposed for amplified sound, and an alternative parking plan is proposed to utilize the existing alfalfa field for up to 132 vehicles. 3 ADA parking places are required as a condition of approval. The applicant did request a waiver of perimeter landscaping based on the agricultural nature of the use and the existing landscaping that is along Lanewood Lane. We received standard comments from responding agencies, and one neighbor commented with concerns on the number of events, noise, alcohol, outside vendors, traffic, parking, and they did provide some requested conditions of approval. During the July 13th public hearing, the commission discussed possible impacts on the neighbors, and 2 motions were brought up with changes to the conditions of approval. The first motion included limiting the approval to 10 vendors at events, allowing beer and wine only for alcohol, and limiting the private events to 100 guests maximum. The second motion included limiting farm dinners to 10, limiting farm nights to 10, limiting private events to 3 with 50 people maximum, limiting the pumpkin patch hours from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., no amplified live music allowed, beer and wine only, and limited to 6 vendors at events. There were additional comments provided by the applicant, and these included the following proposals. They agree to include ADA parking, comply with the fire department conditions, limit alcohol to beer and wine only, allow up to 6 vendors at events with no food trucks, and they propose 15 farm dinners, 15 farm nights, and 5 private events limited to 100 people, pumpkin patch hours from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., and 1 amplified speaker allowed for a solo musician for no more than 5 events. The applicant also submitted a video that was provided to you, and another comment from the same neighboring property owner was submitted addressing the video and restating their concerns about noise, traffic, alcohol, and requesting additional conditions with restrictions on the number of events, alcohol sales, parking, and vendors. And again, they provided those proposed conditions to you. Staff does find that the application complies with Ada County Code and recommends approval to the Commission of the conditional use and master site plan, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Brending. Any questions, staff, by the commissioners? Thank you. That being the case, we'll allow the applicant to come forward. I have two names on the application. Normally, we limit the applicant to 15 minutes. We have a Thomas Smith and a Jordan, is it Miller?
Yes.
So do you want to divide your time? What are you?
I'll speak.
Okay. Please come forward and state your name and address.
Hi there. My name is Jordan Miller, and I live at 5600 West Beacon Light Road. I run Good Life Farms alongside my husband, Thomas Smith. And Thomas and I presented our application to some of you guys in the middle of July, and we are here again tonight to hopefully find a middle ground that balances the concerns of Ada County, our neighbors, and our desire to persist as a small farm. Our property is a roughly 20-acre rectangle at the northwest corner of Beacon Light Road and Lanewood Lane. We homestead the property, living in the primary residence, and we farm the surrounding acreage under Good Life Farms, LLC. In light of the ever-changing economic development of the greater Eagle area, our goal is to merely grow our business to a state of viability such that we are able to preserve our farm as it exists today. In this spirit, we're seeking an event center classification. Our mission is to present visitors with a chance to interact with a working farm where food is grown and harvested. And as we've outlined in our application, our events do include farm nights, farm dinners, and a pumpkin patch. We wish to maintain our property's natural rural aesthetic, and as such, our events are purposely intimate, they're family friendly, and they're low maintenance. So the goal here is that Thomas and I can run them ourselves. We're a two-man show. Now, the term event center does carry certain connotations, but what takes place at Good Life Farms are small, privately held events. Attendees only have access to our outdoor fields and a portable toilet. Under our farm stand permit, which we've had for the past several years, we have successfully held pumpkin patches every October for 3 full years, and we have generated no complaints at all whatsoever from any of our neighbors. This is important to note because this is the largest event type that we have outlined in our application, and it's gone off without a hitch for 3 years, and to the great delight of our local community. I see 12 minutes, so I'm going to keep going. During the last hearing, a neighbor complaint regarding our event center application did spawn an ongoing conversation about the rise in local agritainment businesses. And there were some concerns about the potential for us to impact our neighbors or to have our property turned into something unexpected at a future date, such as a winery or another higher impact event center type. And we've really gone to great lengths in our application to outline our event types in very explicit detail so that they are specific to our property as it exists today as a local farm. And in hearing your comments from the last hearing, we have proactively restricted our number of events down further from our original application in an attempt to find a middle ground. I do ask tonight that you consider our application specifically as it relates to our unique operation. We're a working small-scale vegetable farm. We hand grow all natural produce. We're not a U-pick flower farm. We're not a winery. So we do ask that your experiences with some of these unrelated enterprises not be held against our own distinct circumstances, and that you can instead consider the evidence that we have compiled in our application to reflect the nature of our specific property, our neighborhood, and our projections in particular for our own profitability as a small business. The purpose of our farm is to feed ourselves, our loved ones, and any neighbors with a desire to forge an honest relationship with their food and where it comes from. Our name embodies what we want for ourselves, our animals, and members of our community: a simple, honest, well-lived life. We value quality over quantity, and we strive to provide our visitors with an intimate opportunity to understand exactly where their food is coming from. We thank you very much for the opportunity to continue on with this mission via conditional use permit that enhances our ability to persist as a profitable working farm. And because I do still have a little bit of time, I wanted to read a letter from one of our neighbors who is very close in proximity to us. They're actually a part of our neighborhood. And that's Michael and Susie Dustin. They couldn't be here today, but I'm happy to share this letter with you guys. And they say, "Greetings, as neighbors of Jordan Miller and Thomas Smith, owners of Good Life Farms, we are writing to the Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission to express our support of their conditional use permit application for the following reasons. Preserve rural roots. We appreciate and support Good Life Farms' efforts to preserve the rural roots of Ada County and to promote agriculture, healthy eating, organic farming, and sustainability. As subdivisions consume farmland in Ada County, Good Life Farms serves a need in the community to provide not only locally produced products, but an educational farm experience. No disturbance. Previous events at Good Life Farms have been quite low-key, and in spite of being just 500 feet from their property, we have never heard any noise or experienced any traffic issues. We believe this is due to their consideration for the neighborhood and excellent management processes for addressing noise and traffic. Excellent communications. We're proud of this one. We found Jordan Miller and Thomas Smith to be very open and communicative regarding their events. We are confident that they would be willing to work with us to find a mutually agreeable solution in the unlikely event that one of their events was causing issues in our neighborhood. They cherish the neighborhood as much as we do, and we believe that they would be willing to look for win-win solutions. We ask that the Planning and Zoning Commission support Good Life Farms' conditional use application and minimize any restrictions that would lessen the viability of their business venture. Regards, Michael and Susie Dustin, who live at 5300 West Flicker Lane in Eagle, Idaho. And then I do just have one short video that we did prepare. And the purpose of this video, we found in our last meeting that it was hard to kind of verbally communicate the nature of our farm and describe layouts and things like that. So what we endeavored to do is just put together a compilation video that shows our farm, our proximity to the neighbor who had a complaint in the last meeting. No aspect of this video has been doctored or edited in any way with regard to the original video clips, and we call out in the video when we are zooming in and when we are conducting a time lapse. So with that, and it does have sound, but if the sound won't work, then I'm happy to narrate if we can start fresh.
We can go either way. We want IT to, like Luke's gonna come check it out, so maybe we'll
Okay,
give it a minute, see if the volume will work, and then we'll allow you to narrate if that doesn't work.
okay.
While we're waiting for that, Ms. Miller, you will want that letter submitted for the record. So
Sure, should I hand that in to you guys?
Ms. Brendan
or-
can take care of that for
Okay,
you.
great.
I'm sure. Better share again. And video.
Great. Video was taken at the edge of our proposed event space. In rotating to the east, you can see the parking area that sits along our fence line and is mowed prior to event attendance, as well as the access point to our property from Lanewood. We zoom in to show Kathy's property in the distance, which is separated from our primary event space by 2 agricultural pastures, trees, an irrigation ditch, and a significant difference in elevation. The result is that from 882 feet or 294 yards away, neither our parking area nor our event space can be seen from the McCarthy residence. This is a snapshot of our property from Kathy's house. In this video, we are capturing the proximity of the McCarthy property to another subdivision development project and construction equipment that will soon boast 72 more homes. As you can see, the McCarthy's front door is 40 yards from Beacon Light Road, a major thoroughfare with cars and trucks that pass by at multiple times a minute all day long. Our events are a drop in the bucket compared to this heavy ongoing noise and massive development, and there is no possible way to hear conversations or live music stemming from our property over 2.5 football fields away. This video is a short 5-minute time lapse taken on a Monday afternoon. Beacon Light Road is the shortest route between Highway 55 and Highway 16 and is therefore a heavily trafficked road. Even during the slowest traffic of the day, Beacon Light emits a constant roar that would drown out any noise that could come from our events area.
In our last 3 years of hosting events and pumpkin patches, we have never received a single complaint from any of our neighbors about traffic, noise, or any other type of negative impact, and we're committed to remaining
This
as
is our pumpkin
non-intrusive.
patch.
The speculative, unfounded impositions proposed by the McCarthys in relation to future possible events at Good Life Farms pale in comparison to the current nature of our reality. There is relentless, ongoing construction and development of our surrounding area. We are not responsible for changing the nature of our neighborhood. We are fighting to preserve it.
And that's our little party patch where we hold most of our events. So with that, are there any outstanding questions that I can help answer at this time?
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Are there questions of the commissioners for Ms. Miller? Looks like no. I do have one thing. Ms. Branding, you had mentioned the request for the exemption with regard to the landscaping. There's also the request for the exemption with regard to ADA compliance, correct?
Chairman, the applicant has actually removed that request. In their most recent comments, they said that they will comply with the ADA request.
Okay.
As well as the fire hood, and in our original application, we asked to be exempt from that, but we're happy to comply with both ADA parking and the fire hood.
Thank you very much, Ms. Miller.
Thanks.
We've got a couple people that want to speak to this. We have in the room Kirk Miller. So, Mr. Miller, if you would come forward and give your name and address, please. For those that are speaking, members of the public, we're limited to 3 minutes, so thank you.
Hi, my name is Kirk Miller. I live at 3400 North Lanewood Lane in Eagle, which is directly across the road from Thomas and Jordan. I've lived there for 32 years. I've known Thomas since probably he was 10 years old. He grew up with my kids, and he was always a good kid, and they've been a good influence on the neighborhood. Particularly, they keep the weeds down, they keep it neat and clean, they keep the weeds trimmed. We've got some development lots up the road, and they're not, I mean, there's noxious weeds, there's skeleton weed all over, but the county doesn't enforce that. So anyway, I am in full favor of this operation. I think anytime you can educate the public and give them a chance to get out in the open space and experience agriculture, we're better off for it. I used to work for I retired from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I was, for 37 years, I was an investigator and traveled the United States doing primarily livestock investigations. And you learn pretty quick just how much the general public doesn't know about livestock or agriculture in general. They are probably most people are 2 generations removed from the farm, and they just don't have an idea about what they're dealing with. And anyway, Thomas and Jordan have done a good job. I think they've had 3 different pumpkin patch deals over the years, 3 years of it, and never had a complaint from me. I mean, my house is 125 feet from their property line. Never heard music, never heard yelling, screaming, and, kids out of control. They've done a real good job with it, and I don't think that any time there's ever been more than 20 cars, they park them in their hayfield, and I don't think there's ever been more than 20 at a time there. So traffic is not an issue. Like I mentioned, we have a development on that road above us. There's 2 houses under construction, and there's probably, I went up this morning and looked, and there were 21 vehicles just at the one house. And that doesn't count the dump trucks and equipment and delivery trucks and comings and goings all day long. There's probably 60 round trips, and there's probably 6 cars at the other house that's under construction. So those aren't regulated in any way, and I'm not suggesting they should be. But to regulate these guys with 15 cars, I think there's maybe something that's out of kilter there. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Miller? Mr.
Thank you
Miller,
for your
thank you
time.
very much. We appreciate your time. We do have, one person, Ms. McCarthy on WebEx, is that correct?
Yes, she's online right now.
Okay, so Ms. McCarthy, please state your name and address again for the record.
One moment, please. I'm waiting for her to accept the unmute.
Ah.
Not getting any response from her.
Do you have another way of contacting her? Do you have a phone number or something where you can reach out to her? Make sure that she knows this is her time. Oh, I think I do see her.
Yeah, she's there, but not unmuting for some reason.
Ms. McCarthy, we can see you. I don't know if you can hear us. We're trying to get the audio, so please be patient with us for a moment.
Could you try to unmute your microphone?
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Yay! Okay, Deb, you want to do that for me? Okay, Kathy McCarthy, 5410 West Beacon Light Road, Eagle, Idaho. We live within 300 feet of the property. I want to address the video and some of the things that have been said right away. Video to me, I mean, I live there, and it does not show where exactly our property is. When they took the video that was taken behind trees that are part of the Miller's place, I can see right past those trees onto the property, right where everything's going to be used. And I guarantee you, from my house, it does not look that small. Their house is smaller than my house, and it's bigger than that. So from my house. But I'll go ahead and say this, that they've said that they already feel the events are restricted. And I do not feel that way, and I know my husband doesn't feel that way. There's 20 dinners, 20 farm nights, 10 rentals, and then there's October. That's 58 events in 24 weeks. That is more than an event every week. 38 of them with amplified sound and possibly alcohol. 28 of them with vendors. The vendors will promote this. They've already said they're going to advertise this. That will make for a lot of people coming and going. It's a come as you want. There's no way they can possibly control the numbers. The things they've spoken about in the past did not involve this number of people or this amount of preparation and promotion. So this is a total different story. And no one wants to live next door to somebody who has a party in their backyard every weekend. Traffic on that Beacon Light can be loud at times, but on the weekends is when it's quieter. So I would say this too. The high school is more than a mile from us, and I can hear stuff there. And the sound carries very well. I hear stuff at Kirk Miller's farm and their farm all the time. And I know they hear stuff from ours. There's nothing out there to stop the sound from carrying. We don't have other houses. I just would like to see this toned down some. You can't possibly, and you're setting a precedence here. If you give them all of this, it's only right to allow others to do it too. And it's like, when does it stop? It will get to be so much going on in our area. You'll turn it into an industrial zone. And that is not what we want either, and that is not the intent. I think that there needs to be some toning down of things here. And it's been suggested that the reason we're upset about this has to do with the cell phone tower. It has nothing to do with the tower. This will not affect the tower. You never saw me at any of those meetings. We signed something, turned it over to them, and they did all the function. We have no idea who even spoke up against it, and we don't care. This is a separate issue, and it's strictly about this. I don't have, their idea is a great one, but this is not, this many events is too many, and it needs to be toned down.
Ms. McCarthy, with apologies, it has been over 3 minutes. Do you have any final comments to make here?
No, that's okay. And I want to thank you all, and I appreciate your time and help with this.
Okay, if you'll stick with us for a minute. Do the commissioners have any questions for Ms. McCarthy? All right, Ms. McCarthy, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak to this matter? And there's no one else online, correct?
No, Mrs. McCarthy was the only one.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Brending, before we turn the time back to the applicant for rebuttal, do you have anything to add with respect to what's gone on, or do the commissioners have any questions for staff?
I do have a question.
Okay, please, Mr. Scott.
So for the, you showed on the slide presentation what they're willing to kind of meet in the middle on. I think it was like the third or fourth slide. I can't remember, but can I just go back? Can we just go back and see that real quick? So originally they had the 20 farm dinners, 20 farm nights, correct? And they're wanting to, they're saying they'll drop it down. Okay. Sorry, I just wanted to see that again because I was scrolling and I couldn't find it on my thing here, but.
Commissioner Scott. It's also in the memo
Okay.
document on the agenda, and the way it's outlined in the memo is it shows like the compromise
I got you.
versus
Okay, perfect.
what was originally there as well.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you. That's all I had. Thanks.
Okay, anything else? Thank you very much, Ms. Brending. We will ask the applicant to come forward again and give a rebuttal if you would like to do so.
Okay, so, in Kathy's statement, she did obviously miss the proposed events that we came back with, so we are actively working to compromise. At this point, it is really difficult to respond to her concerns in any manner other than to just say that they're ungrounded and they can be easily disproved. Ms. McCarthy's original application or original complaint centered around traffic concerns on Lanewood Lane, a private road to which she has no legal right to use or access. It's not connected to her property. She's not a member of our neighborhood. And in her most recent letter, she's since pivoted to concerns about the sounds of car doors being closed and things being dropped, despite residing a mere 40 yards from a major throughway that roars consistently with traffic and construction equipment. And this is all weekend long. It doesn't let up. In her most recent letter to Ada County, she went so far as to raise concerns that one of our notice letters went to the parents of an owner of Good Life Farms. This is verifiably untrue. Neither of our parents live in Ada County. They don't own property in Ada County. So my best possible interpretation is that she assumed that because my last name is Miller, that Kirk and I are somehow related. The point that I want to make here is that Kathy is comfortable making statements with great conviction, but they are completely false. And at this point, we have spent a ton of time and energy applying the burden of proof to totally fabricated concerns from someone who, at this point, is just throwing things at a wall to see what will stick. So do you have to consider the concerns of neighbors? Yes, absolutely. We believe in that. We love our neighbors. We don't want to be of impact to anyone, and that's why we haven't been for 3 full years. Is the definition of adverse impact inherently subjective? Also, yes. but you do not have to entertain blatantly unfounded statements that are no way reflective of reality. And at this point, I do, offer for anyone who's still on the fence, drive to Kathy's property, stand next to her home, and either see or hear the goings-on of our property over 2 football fields away. You won't, because physically you can't, at least not in this reality. But, a couple other concerns here. With the exception of our pumpkin patch, all of our events are ticketed. There are RSVPs that we take in advance. We know exactly who will be on our property and when, and there is no unpredictable influx of traffic. And just to hit it home, farm dinners, for example, are sold to couples with 1 ticket per 2 people. There's a max occupancy of 16. This is 8 total cars. This is a small, intimate event. These speculations that things could get quite large, well, those are speculations. They're not reflective of the self-imposed restrictions that we have carefully put into our application. We have reduced our number of proposed events. We have agreed to ADA parking spaces. We've agreed to a commercial fire hood. We are willing to limit alcohol sales to beer and wine. We have self-proposed a cap on the number of vendors. We've said, hey, no food trucks. And this is all in the spirit of finding a middle ground that ameliorates the concerns of our neighbors. Now, this doesn't change the fact that as a seasonal business with a growing operation that's only viable from May to October, we have a very pressing need to take advantage of agritourism to supplement our income from direct produce sales. And, I want to be clear, this is a business. This is my husband's full-time job from sunup to sundown. Farming is brutal, it is thankless, and due to the unpredictability of the seasons, it is full of financial losses. The events that we have outlined they're not arbitrary and they're not excessive. They're in direct correlation to our budgetary forecast for what we need to survive as a small business. At one point in the last hearing, someone did mention that our proposed farm events might change the character of the neighborhood. As a resident of the formerly agrarian Eagle, Idaho, I just have to say that the character of the neighborhood was altered a long time ago. A sea of subdivisions have absolutely obliterated the last remaining operational farmland in our community. The land Door North and Door West have been annexed into Eagle City for high-density housing. And, although we want to write it away, Kathy herself has an active agreement with Intermax Towers to have a 100-foot monopole cell tower on her property. If that's not changing the nature of the neighborhood, I don't know what is. We are doing what we can here to preserve an open rural landscape. No one wants to watch another farmer forced to sell their land to a subdivision because they can no longer make money on their farm. But at this point, it's not been very easy. So that's all.
Ms. Miller, we can give you an opportunity to conclude. Do you have anything else you want to add before? Okay, well, if you'll bear with us for a minute. Are there questions for the applicant? Commissioner Ratzlaff.
Yes, thank you so much for doing the video. I appreciate that.
Oh, of course.
What I wanted to know is because I wasn't here and I've read through the documentation, but I can't remember at this time. Are you parking in the hayfield? Is that where you're having everybody park?
Yeah, so our property runs along Lanewood Lane. It's a private road to which only a handful of neighbors have access. In our original application, we submitted our, basically permit to use the road from our neighbors. They're in agreement with our road maintenance agreement. People come up Lanewood. We have an ingress point, which was shown in the video. It's a little dirt road. There's a gate. You can drive through the fence. You can drive onto the alfalfa field. And then we actually also have another gap in the fence where people can exit. So it's a really beautiful little circular loop of ingress, egress, no traffic, no backup. And they're parking exclusively on our property. We mow down the alfalfa field. It's just like parking in a lawn.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I just have one question.
Commissioner Scott.
Just a follow-up is on her question. Is that where they've been parking all along for the pumpkin patch? So that's just traditionally been parking, it's nothing new? Okay.
Yeah. And I do want to say, when we submitted our original application, you know, we set up to 132 parking spaces, not because that's what we want necessarily, or that, you know, we need to have 132 cars. We just wanted to show how much space that we actually have here, so that there were no questions or concerns about whether or not there would be traffic or a backup or people parking on Lanewood. We have, you know, 10 full acres of alfalfa field where people can park their cars.
Other questions for Ms. Miller? Ms. Miller, I do have a couple questions for you, and I'll go ahead and ask them now because they will come up after we close the public portion of the meeting, and so I want you to have an opportunity to respond.
Sure.
A difference between the events that you've had in the past and the events that are going to be conducted in the future will be public events that will be held in the evening with alcohol served. And so with the restrictions that I've seen up there, I see no time limit for when you're going to cut off those meetings in the evening. And so as far as the noise is concerned, and Ms. McCarthy and the subdivisions are going to be going in that may be complaining about it afterwards, what is to prevent the people from drinking there? I understand it's not going to be spirits, but it's going to be beer and wine, people drinking there, and as a result of that, getting loud, boisterous, and having the events going 10:30, 11:30 at night.
In our original application, we do have time restrictions that we have outlined for each event type, and I believe that we capped it at either 8 or 9 p.m. for each of the events.
Chairman, those hours that were originally proposed are still a part of the proposal. They are up on the screen for you now.
Okay, so the end time would be, I'm sorry, I'm looking at it now, Pumpkin Patch ends at 9 p.m. That's very much family-oriented, and it's, right?
So for our original, I know, I'm so sorry, Corey. So this is our original time that we maintain as a part of our proposal for farm dinners and farm nights, 5 to 9 p.m. For the Pumpkin Patch in particular, which is a family event, in the last meeting, there was a healthy discussion about when that should end. So one of the things that we came back with is that we're happy to limit the hours, but we propose doing so with hours that just match the nature of our business. So I believe, we said 12 to 8 p.m. on the Pumpkin Patch.
So Ms. Brendan, can you go back to the prior screen? So I'm looking at farm nights, Thursdays or Fridays. So are you planning on having any events on, I see, Pumpkin Patch is Saturdays and Sundays, but you're not planning on having any of the events at which you'd have the dinners and alcohol served on either Saturday or Sunday?
I think we said Thursdays, Fridays, or Saturdays.
You do say Thursday and Friday, so you're limiting it to Thursdays and Fridays.
So Thursdays and Fridays, I think we said for farm nights, Thursdays,
Right,
Fridays,
that's
and
what I'm
Saturdays for farm dinners. And with regard to alcohol, just to, explain that for our farm dinners and our farm nights, because those are ticketed events, like the way our farm nights would work is that, you and your partner buy a ticket, come to the farm, you have a bottle of wine. It's not freewheeling and dealing one-off alcohol sales. And just to underscore, and I think I talked about this at the last meeting, this is just my husband and I, we're an operational farm. We can't have people going nuts on our property, because we don't want any of our vegetables or fruits to be damaged. So we are very restrictive, ourselves, with trying to keep these events very maintained and under control. This is more, two adults having a glass of wine at sunset than it is an open-ended drinking fest.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Ms. Miller, thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
So we'll now close the public testimony portion of the meeting with respect to this matter, and we're looking for a motion one way or the other. After the motion is made and seconded, then we'll have a discussion.
Chairman Birch.
Yes, Commissioner Exton.
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I move to approve project 202300645 CU MSP, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A, with the following modifications. adherence to the ADA parking compromise, or including the ADA parking, agreeing with the fire department requirements, limiting the alcohol to beer and wine only, 6 vendors allowed with no food trucks as part of that, 15 farm dinners and 15 farm nights, 5 private events limited to 100 people at those private events, the pumpkin patch with operation hours of noon to 8 p.m., and 1 amplified speaker allowed in relation to business operations. In addition to all of that, I would also like to add a 2-year review period to this approval.
Thank you, Commissioner Exton. Is there a second?
My second.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Motion has been made and seconded. Commissioner Exton, would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Sure, yeah. I mean, to me, this does seem very low impact compared to some other things we've, reviewed here, especially in that area of Ada County. All these events are very, smaller scale, things like that. I do think this, the proposed compromise here really shows the willingness of the applicant to make these compromises to try and please all the neighbors involved. And, I do think adding this 2-year review period is something we've done specifically a lot in this area with the different wineries and the other, event social hall style designations to see how they're going, things like that, especially when there are concerned neighbors. So I think having this 2-year review period to have that kind of built-in check-in period with this project will be very worthwhile to see how things are going. Are there things that aren't working with the neighbors that we can then address at that time, either through adding new conditions or potentially easing back on some at that point?
Thank you, Commissioner Exton. Commissioner Scott, do you have anything to add?
Yes, on top of everything that Commissioner Exton said, which I agree with wholeheartedly, this farm has previously had established pumpkin patches, and that's their largest event. Even with these new additions, I really appreciate their willingness to come to a compromise, because there was pretty significant debate both amongst the commissioners as well as with people giving testimony. So them coming back and coming forward willingly to make those adjustments speaks volumes, in my opinion, as well as the additional neighbor support that they brought. The gentleman that spoke earlier, as well as the letter, that also weighs pretty heavily on my opinion of this moving forward with this. And I somewhat disagree with the idea that this is going to suddenly become an industrial zone, that we're suddenly going to be turning this into some large scale operation. I feel like it's exactly the opposite of that. We're preserving the agricultural scene in that area, but making it more viable for business, for someone to have that as their primary means of income, rather than it becoming a subdivision and such. So I agree. I'm going to be voting to approve this, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Commissioner Retzlaff.
Yes, I also want to thank the applicant for taking the time to really do a thorough presentation. We always appreciate video, so thank you very much. I like the fact that they're ticketed events, so you know exactly how many people are going to be coming in, and you can kind of control that time and traffic. And the fact that you have one entry point and one exit point really is beneficial to the traffic that goes through that area, and ease of ingress and egress. That's very nice. I like that. I don't see a problem with supplementing your income in this manner, and there are going to be a lot of homes that are going to be built in that area, high-density homes. And, we really have to think about what kids are exposed to and what opportunities we give our neighbors. And I just appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Retzlaff, any other comments from the commissioners? I will just add that I don't discount at all the testimony of Ms. McCarthy. I understand that she may hear about some of these events when they're going on, and yet it is exactly as has been said by the other commissioners. The applicant was grilled during the meeting on July. They have come back with substantial compromises, and my feeling is that this is going to be an asset to the community. And so, based on that, I'm also going to be voting in favor of it. So I think we are ready for a vote.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Chairman, just with the 2-year review, we've been asked to clarify what exactly we're doing with those, because it's been a bit nebulous since we've been adding those for the last couple of years. So if you'd entertain staff and what we might add to that condition, and I guess we could ask Commissioner Exton and Scott to accept this, if, as a commission, but we will be noticing, similar to how we've noticed for this, we'll be scheduling it at hearing. It'll be heard before the Planning and Zoning Commission. And just to clarify, it's not to revoke the use, but to potentially modify or even remove conditions in the event you guys deem that appropriate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Okay. We just haven't had that level of clarity, and we've got a few of these coming up, and staff's been trying to figure out what that review actually looks like. So just wanted to spell that out with all of you. And we'll add it to the conditions as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Letson. All right. All those in favor of the motion that's been made, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. All right, the motion carries. We thank the applicant very much. All right, we're ready to move to the next item on the agenda, which is a motion to table number 202-301-060-ZC-DA-S-VAC-PR. And so I think what we're looking for is a motion to table this item. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Letson. We have a motion to table this item.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Scott.
I motion we table to the September 14th Planning and Zoning Commission hearing, item number 202-30106-ZC-DA-S-VAC-PR, again, to the September 14th Planning and Zoning hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Ratzlaff has seconded. I think we're ready for if there's no discussion, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye, and there is no one opposed. So we are now ready for the next item, and that is 202-301-314-CPA. And I see Mr. Letson standing there, so I presume Mr. Letson is going to give the presentation.
Yes, Chairman, Commissioners, thank you. So the item before you is a comprehensive plan text amendment. Ada County Development Services is the applicant on this item. The purpose of the text amendment is to amend Appendix E3, which is the CUNA Rural Fire District Impact Fee Study and Capital Improvement Plan of our 2025 Ada County Comprehensive Plan. The proposed study, which is dated November 30th of 2021, will completely replace the existing study, which was originally done in 2018 and then amended in 2019. And there will be a follow-up effort after your decision tonight on the comp plan text amendment before the board to adopt an updated ordinance by the board to collect a new impact fee. Just to let you know, we're already collecting an impact fee for CUNA Fire, but they've gone through a new study to figure out what they actually need for the cost of services based on growth and other things over the next 10 years. And so that fee is increasing. So that is the purpose of this, is to kind of sync up what they determine they need in terms of an impact fee and what we're actually collecting for them. And so just a general overview of what the fee is. They've anticipated additional 25,000 people basically between 2021 and 2031, or an annual growth rate of little over 7%. So significant growth for a town the size of CUNA. And kind of not just CUNA, but their district. So it's growth within their district, which includes the city limits. And so I won't get into the nitty-gritty details there, but the new fee is listed below. And what we're seeing here is about a 100% increase, actually, in the existing fee as it exists today and what they're proposing. Again, based on growth, based on their needs for new capital improvements, which include such things as fire stations, fire trucks, anything that is capital, not operational expenses. So this would be the new fee that our board would take action on to include in an updated ordinance. Give you a sense of the CUNA Rural Fire District. So the darker pink is the actual boundary of the district, and then the lighter pink is those portions that are currently inside of CUNA city limits. So you can actually see there's a significant amount of property that is in Ada County still served by CUNA Fire. So it is in our interest to help them collect this fee as well, because a lot of the projects you see and the development proposals that we review rely on CUNA Fire to effectively serve them. Just an overview of the process here. Sorry, I've got my little speaker box that's blocking part of my text. So initially, CUNA Fire brought this to our Ada County Development Impact Advisory Committee. And that group, which their purpose is to review and recommend approval or denial of these capital improvement studies, recommended approval of this in November of 2022. Shortly after, CUNA Fire actually had the city of CUNA adopt this for them, and came to our attention that we had yet to adopt it for them as well. So we're, again, trying to parallel what's occurring inside city limits to also be occurring outside of city limits to basically help them collect the fees they need in order to grow the way that they need to. We notified departments and outside agencies in June of this year, also sent a public service announcement to the general public, published 2 legals in the paper, and tonight we're before you at a public hearing. So this is all required by state code for any comprehensive plan text amendment. And the next stop for this will be the Ada County Board of County Commissioners. So you are a recommending body, just to reiterate that. In terms of responses, really nothing. The building official had no objection to the project, and our senior community and regional planner, Brent Moore, identified that this is in support of the CUNA comprehensive plan that we have adopted into our own comprehensive plan. And I can go into the details of that if you like, but basically we need fire service in order to allow a community to grow. Without it, it's not a very safe situation, and we shouldn't probably be approving things. So in the end, we're asking you to recommend approval of this item to our board, and I'll stand for any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Letson? So, Mr. Letson, I'm curious, and my eyes aren't good enough to have seen, does the CUNA Fire District extend over the county line into Canyon County?
You know, that's a great question. With McDermott Road there, I would assume that it is extending over there, and so they'd be working with Canyon County to collect this fee in that jurisdiction as well.
That's what I was wondering. And how much have the fees increased?
It's about 100% increase, yeah. So
They're doubling them.
yes, yeah. So currently the fee we collect is around $850 to $900 per residential unit. One other differentiation here is we currently have a residential fee and a non-residential fee. What they're asking to do is break that non-residential fee out into specific non-residential uses like industrial, retail, and office, because they've found there's a different level of demand based on the type of use. So, but in the end, if you were to kind of average that, it would be about 100% increase over what's currently being collected for the non-residential fee.
Okay. Thank you very much. No questions?
I have one question.
Yeah, Commissioner Retzlaff.
Do you know how much, how many homes or what's the population growth in CUNA from even just 3-4 years ago?
I wouldn't venture, I can't give you a hard number. I can tell you they're expecting about 25,000 more people between 2021 and 2031. And that's would be more than 50% of the existing population in the area. So it's a significant, that area is growing very fast.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Letson. I don't want to be too presumptuous, but is there anyone here in the audience that wishes to speak to this matter? Seeing no, I think that we are ready for a motion.
Chairman Birch.
Commissioner Exton.
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I move to recommend approval of project 202301314 CPA to the Board of County Commissioners for the proposed amendment to the Ada County 2025 Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Exton, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Commissioner Colson has seconded. Any discussion? Commissioner Exton?
Not really. I mean, fire safety is very important, and this seems like a no-brainer to me.
I think we're ready for a vote then. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye, and there's no one opposed. So I think we're good. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is item 202-301-044-S. And it looks like Mr. Lindstrom is going to make the presentations. Mr. Lindstrom, we'll turn the time to you.
Thank you, Chairman Birch. Yes, application 2023-01044-S is before you. This is Bold Estates subdivision. Applicant is Morgan Boulderman. We have a vicinity map here that just shows general area. The property is located just south of the Columbia Road and Cloverdale Road intersection, which is in just southwest of Boise area, kind of southeast of Meridian and northeast of CUNA. It's kind of in right in the target zone there of between all the different impact areas. Here's the aerial map for you. So this is a preliminary plat application for a 2-lot subdivision. Property is addressed at 7985 South Cloverdale Road, contains 4.79 acres in the estate residential R1 district. The applicant is requesting the property be split into 2 buildable rural residential lots. Both lots will be a minimum of 1 acre to meet the estate residential lot size minimum. Each lot will also have at least 100 feet of roadway frontage along Cloverdale Road. No new roads are proposed, and a new driveway approach will be necessary for Lot 2 to build a residence in the future. Lot 1 will contain the existing residence and accessory structures on the property. So we got Lot 1 here, kind of wraps around in an L here, and then we have Lot 2 out front. 10 Mile Creek runs along the western property line, and as noted on the preliminary plat, will remain an 100-foot wide drainage easement. The property is also located within Zone AE of the Flood Hazard Overlay District. Therefore, any future development or construction of future homes, accessory buildings, those are all going to require a flood development application prior to work commencing. We've also made it a condition of approval that they include the flood hazard zone and all the overlay district information on the final plat when they bring that before the board. The subdivision complies with Chapter 8-6 of the Ada County Code, since the proposed lots comply with the dimensional standards for the estate residential district. The property is in unincorporated Ada County. It's not within an impact area. Therefore, Ada County Comprehensive Plan is the applicable comp plan. As I mentioned, this is kind of in no man's land here in terms of the impact areas. They all go around it. So because of that, this property is allowed to be on a well and septic. Generally speaking, the R1 district would be required to connect to urban public facilities if they're going to subdivide the property, but because it's not in one of those urban service planning areas, they do not have the opportunity to connect to services, and therefore we see it as more rural in nature, and therefore they can move forward with the well and septic. The land use map of the Ada County Comp Plan does designate this as a residential non-farm sub, which is primarily intended for detached single-family homes on large lots. As the 2 proposed lots are to be 2 acres in size larger, and Lot 1 will continue to have the existing home. The proposed sub is compatible with the comprehensive plan. The Ada County engineer has identified that this subdivision is in a nitrate priority area, and new wells should be tested for arsenic, uranium, and nitrates along with typical well testing. And those are to be reported to the county, and that is one of the conditions of approval that we're proposing. We have not received any other comments from the public or any opposition from any agencies. Staff is recommending approval and will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Any questions of staff from the commissioners? Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Lindstrom. We will now call the applicant forward. Morgan Balderman, if you would come forward and please state your name and address.
Hi there, Morgan Boulderman. I'm at 7985 South Cloverdale Road in Boise. I'm the owner of the property. First of all, Connor, thank you for patiently answering all my questions through this process, which have been many emails. So I also wanted to say, sitting through that last half hour or so, just really gave me a fresh appreciation for how you guys have to balance the growth with what I'll call the spirit of the county, right? It's in that same spirit that I'm proposing this. I am on a farm, and I too have felt the effects of subdivisions kind of encroaching from every direction and the increased traffic. What I'm proposing simply is I'm on just under 5 acres. I just don't use a lot of the acreage, and I know there's so many families out there that would love the opportunity to have an acreage property, and they're so hard to get. So just taking 2 of my roughly 5 acres and splitting it off and giving another family the opportunity to have their forever property here in Idaho so many people come here to get acreage and to raise their children and to have that experience. So I just figured, all my neighbors in a row around me all feel the same way. If I can give somebody else the same chance that I got, that's really all I'm after. And if there's any questions, please let me know.
Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Hey, I did appreciate the name of the estates. Bold Estates, Mr. Boulderman.
Yeah, I can't say that there wasn't a little hint of a namesake in there. So,
All right. Thank you, Mr. Boulderman.
okay, thank you.
So we have Kelly Martin that has listed as wanting to speak.
I don't want to speak, I'm good.
All right. Okay. Any further questions on this? Any questions for staff? No? In that case, I think we're looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Scott.
based upon the findings of facts and conclusions of law contained herein in the testimony from the public hearing, I recommend the commission approves project number 202301044-S, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A and the preliminary plat received on May 23rd, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Retzlaff. Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Scott, would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Just very quickly, this is pretty straightforward. I think spinning this off makes sense. There are people that want to have additional acreage. It's not like he's trying to parcel this out into a 10th acre subdivision. It still fits what's going on there, and I have no problem with it. So I recommend approval.
Thank you. Commissioner, any other commissioners have any comments? Looks like we're good, so I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion that's been made, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye, and there's no one opposed. So it looks like we're good. Bold Estates will happen. All right, the next item on the agenda is item number 202-301-057-CU-MSP. And Mr. Lindstrom, you're still up.
Thank you, Chairman. Application 2023-01057-CU-MSP is before you. The applicant is Antonio Ayon. Vicinity map here shows the property that we're talking about is off Overland Road, just south of I-84, west of Black Cat. So this is a conditional use and a master site plan application for a contractor's yard and a wholesale nursery. Property is addressed at 5956 West Overland Road, contains 5 acres in the RUT district. This is the site plan. We got kind of split in half here since it was very long and skinny. As you can see, that the property runs north-south. So site plan kind of splits it in half. So the southern portion is on the left here. Overland Road is down here at the bottom. Then the northern half of the site plan is on the right. So A&A Landscaping has applied to operate the facility. The applicant stated in their detail letter that their plan is to grow and sell plants for transplanting, budding, grafting, or layering. On the property, there will be stocks for restoration, wetland mitigation or conservation, and then environmental landscaping for gardens, homes, businesses, parks, and other landscapes. Those are all going to be stored on the site. As you can see, and I know that it's very difficult to read, it was hard to zoom in here, but we have the different areas up front and throughout the property where they have storage of those plants. They have back here another area where materials can be picked up by trucks and trailers, and hopefully the applicant can maybe address any questions you have about the ins and outs of all that. There are some existing structures on the site that will be utilized for the wholesale nursery. I'm just going to list them off here. There's going to be a 2,081 square foot pole barn, 1,718 square foot shop, 1,320 square foot pole barn, 838 square foot storage building, 610 square foot pole barn, and then 2 different 288 square foot storage sheds. And lastly, in the upper right-hand corner, we have a greenhouse, 560 square feet. There is an existing dwelling. If you can see my cursor, it's here on the left. A portion of that dwelling is going to be converted into an office. 760 square feet of it approximately will be converted to office space. There is a building permit that will be required as part of the conditions for the change in occupancy for that portion of the structure. The rest is to remain as the dwelling with the garage. No new structures are proposed for the use, but there is a parking area that's going to be included. You can see it in the middle. There's 21 spaces that are going to be provided, 2 of which will be ADA paved parking spaces. The parking area will allow for employees will allow for employees to park and work on the site. In addition, the parking area will allow for 9 commercial trucks to park on the site. The contractor's yard, so as I stated, there's a wholesale nursery use and a contractor's yard use. The contractor's yard use is specific to those commercial vehicles being able to be stored on the site. So that's why we have that. And the outdoor storage area, it is a condition that it'll have to be screened from other properties. As I go forward here, actually, I'm not going to go there yet. Sorry. Operations for this facility are proposed to be year-round, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. There's not going to be any public permitted to come on here, like no, patrons can come and just buy materials. Specifically, the owner or operator is only permitted to propagate, grow, store, and/or package for commercial sale, to then sell goods in large quantities to a limited number of buyers. So that's why we have it a wholesale nursery. If it was allowed to have other folks on, it'd be a retail nursery, but this is specifically wholesale. The site will be serviced by existing well and septic. There was a natural features analysis that was done. It did not indicate any severe detriment to the natural features of the site. The parking plan meets the Ada County Code. Applicant included a landscaping plan, and they revised that before we got to you tonight. The point totals meet the requirements there, so they're good on the landscaping plan. There are some lights, I don't know if they're proposed or currently on the site, but there's, I believe, 5 different lights that are about 20 feet tall in height. Because those are proposed, they will have to submit a lighting plan as a condition of approval, but that's a deferred submittal that they can submit after tonight. Let's see here. Lastly, if I go forward, the properties within Meridian's impact area, it's their future land use map we're looking at. It defines the area as low density residential, which is in compliance with this site and the use. The last point I will make is we do have a situation with the property boundary. So what Ada County Development Services, what we see as the property as it sits today, is this red line. So it actually cuts part of the structure here and off, and we actually see it on the other property. The applicant and the folks to the east, they did a record of survey. They went ahead and had that recorded without going through the proper avenues to get that approved with our office. So it is a condition of approval that they formalize this to make it look like they want to up here in the northeast corner where they have both of those structures on this property. So that is a condition of approval. The applicant is working with the property to the east to get that submitted to our office. That is one of those key conditions that I mentioned. It's up here at the top. See, the other ones is that the applicant shall erect a fence to ensure the outdoor storage area for commercial vehicle is screened year-round. That would just need to be around that where the commercial trucks are parked. The applicant shall submit a land use change application to the Nampa and Meridian Irrigation District prior to any development. They noted that there are some existing structures here that are potentially encroaching into their easement for the canal. So they're going to have to get approval from Nampa and Meridian Irrigation District. Our county engineer noted that a berm must be placed along the Reidenbach Canal as well to prevent stormwater runoff from contributing to that canal. So they would have to work with the irrigation district to make sure that that's all good and meets the setback from the easement there. And then lastly, the conditional use permit for the contractor's yard has to, after 5 years, it expires, so they would have to come back and go through this process again if they want the commercial vehicles to stay on the site. But the wholesale nursery, if you did approve it tonight, it would run in perpetuity with the property. I think that covers it. Staff is recommending approval with conditions, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lindstrom. Any questions of the commissioners for Mr. Lindstrom? I do have a quick question. Do I remember correctly that the applicant has owned this property for 20 years?
That I'm not sure of. I do know that the site is currently it acts as a contractor's yard or wholesale nursery today, so there are some, you can see here that there's work that has been done on the site already. So, but as to who is operating or how long they've owned the property, I'm not sure of that.
But that was going to be my
hopefully the
next
applicant
question.
can answer that for you.
Was what it's been used for in the
Yeah.
past. Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Lindstrom, thank you very much. We'll ask the applicant to come forward. Please state your name and address. Is the applicant not here? Antonio, how do you pronounce his last name, Mr.
I believe it's Aon.
Aon.
Yep.
No, he's not online.
All right. I presume we can proceed without the applicant. Is that correct?
Chairman, Commissioners, I believe absent an applicant, they're going to take whatever you give them at the end of this, so yeah.
All right. Well, I guess Mr. Lindstrom's it. So given that, we are,
Is there anyone speaking other than the applicant?
I do not have anybody on the list. Is there anybody in the room that's speaking, that wishes to speak with respect to this particular application? The answer being no. So we are ready for a motion with respect to this application. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman.
Oh, go ahead. You got it.
Commissioner Etzlaff.
Based upon the findings of facts and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, the commission approves project number 202301057-CU-MSB, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A and the master site plan received May 24, 2023.
Commissioner Etzlaff, is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Exton is seconded. Commissioner Etzlaff, would you like to speak in favor of your motion?
Absolutely. I think we've put enough conditions on here in Exhibit A, which looks like about 3 full pages, that should make sure that anybody who tries to develop this area further would have a lot of conditions, and it would probably look very nice after they got done. Also, I appreciate the fact that we got a report from ACHD that this development is estimated to generate no additional vehicle trips per day. And the Boise Project Board of Control also issued a report talking about the Riddenbaugh Canal, and we know how important that is for that farmland area after or below where that runs to. So I think that for these reasons, I think it should be approved.
Thank you very much. Any additional discussion about this item by the commissioners?
And one thing I just appreciate is the little bit of cleanup that's happening with this as well, where it's a condition to get the property boundaries like formally adjusted. And if that does not work out, then that obviously impacts the actual conditions of approval as well. So there is kind of that incentive for the follow through, even though the applicant is not here tonight.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Say aye, and no one opposed, so unanimous. Mr. Lindstrom, I think that the applicant owes you for doing such a great job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda is item 202-300-172-CPA-ZC-DA-V-CU-MSP. Ms. Brending, we'll turn the time over to you for the presentation.
Just one moment, please. All right. Chairman, Commissioners, Project 202300172 CPA ZC DA V CU MSP is a comprehensive plan amendment, rezone, variance, and conditional use and master site plan for a sawmill for railroad ties. The property is located off of South Orchard Access Road, south of the railroad and Monroe Avenue, and contains a total of 403.53 acres. The proposal requires a comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use, which is currently rangeland and agriculture non-irrigated, to industrial. The industrial land use is primarily for warehousing, general manufacturing, railroads, industrial business parks, outdoor storage, rock crushing, agriculture processing plants, technology facilities, mineral extraction, and it also provides opportunities for industrial uses outside of areas of city impact, particularly for those that require rail or airport access. The current zoning of the property is rural preservation, which the applicant has proposed to change to general industrial. The purpose of the general industrial district is to encourage heavy industrial development by providing and protecting an environment for such development, subject to standards that protect public health, safety, and welfare. The rezone to an industrial zone is required to allow for the proposed development of a sawmill for railroad ties. The sawmill will cut, prepare, treat, and store railroad ties that will be used by Union Pacific Railroad. The application will include a wood treatment and milling facility, 2 support buildings for employee restrooms, break rooms, and offices, and vehicle and parking access. There are also several outdoor areas for storage and air seasoning locations for the railroad ties. And the project also includes extension of railroad tracks that would come off the Union Pacific Railroad main line and toward the storage areas. The ties would also be transported via the rail. As conditioned, the applicant will be required to submit an additional detailed parking plan that shows at least 1 parking space for every 2 employees that will be on site at a time. Here's a larger aerial view of the site plan. The original larger site plan view that was submitted in the staff report included a previously submitted layout, so this shows the updated layout that you had seen as up close as a larger view. There are some residential uses in the area. There are 2 residential locations that are over 1,000 feet from the subject property and over 2,500 feet from the site of the facility on the property. There's also another residential use commonly known as the Potato Airbnb. That one's a little bit closer, but still approximately 600 feet from the property line and over 2,000 feet from the side of the facility on the property. The applicant is proposing to utilize well and septic for the application. The Idaho Department of Water Resources will be required to approve any new water appropriations, and the applicant must provide adequate fire flow as required by the state fire marshal. Central District Health will also be required to approve the sewage disposal system. Additional comments include the fire marshal's comments requiring dust collection systems for the mill, fire flow, which may require water tanks, automatic sprinklers in some of the buildings, and a comprehensive review with the submittal of the building plans. The county engineer will require a drainage plan, details for the products that are used in the treatment of the ties, and the applicant must adhere to the state requirements for hazardous material storage and spills, and management of activities with potential to degrade the aquifer. We currently have not received a report from ACHD on any traffic impacts. No neighboring property owners have provided comments on the application. There is a variance included in the application for relief of some of the requirements for the sawmill, such as it being required to be fully enclosed and the screening of the site. However, that part of the application will be decided on by the Board of County Commissioners. With that, staff is finding that the application complies with the Ada County Comprehensive Plan and the Ada County Code and recommends approval of the Comprehensive Plan Map Amendment, Zoning Ordinance Map Amendment, Conditional Use, and Master Site Plan. And I'll stand for any questions.
Do the commissioners have any questions for staff? Ms. Branding, this may be more appropriate to ask of the applicant. You tell me the Idaho Fish and Game raised concerns about the manner of the application of the preservative on the railroad ties, whether or not it would be aerosol. There's also, what is it, the slick spot pepper grass? I can't remember what it is, the threatened species that's there. Then, so do you have any information about how the preservative is to be applied and anything about the concerns of Idaho Fish and Game?
Chairman, I do not have information on how the treatment is applied to the ties. The applicant can address that. Idaho Fish and Game did kind of suggest that the applicant needs to work with, I believe, U.S. Fish and Wildlife to receive any additional approvals that may be required, and I have that included as a condition of approval.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we have the applicant online, correct? And we have two individuals, and so were they?
Chairman, I believe one of the applicants is in person.
Oh, all right. I see you there. Perfect. We ask you to please come forward and give your name and address.
These things always still make me nervous, so bear with me. Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Kindy Mosman, and for the record, my address is 2775 West Navigator Drive in Meridian. That's 83642.
And I'm sorry, can you please pull the microphone a little closer to you?
Yeah, like that? Is that better?
That is much better. Thank you very much.
I get nervous and quiet, so thank you. I'd like to start by thanking the staff for all of their help on this project. Corey, Zach, Ben, Richard Beck, and everyone has just been extremely helpful through this process. I have hounded poor Corey with so many questions, and she's been a saint. As you are aware, we are applying for several items tonight on behalf of Ameritize Holdings, LLC. I won't bore you with relisting the applications that we are applying for. As Corey mentioned, the comprehensive plan map amendment is needed to change the future land use designation from agriculture, non-irrigated, and rangeland to industrial to support the rezone of the property from RP to M2. We feel that the industrial land use category is the right fit for this railroad, as it's not really suitable within the city of impact areas, specifically with it requiring direct railroad access. The conditional use application is needed due to the recent zoning ordinance text amendment that was heard and approved around June 14th. The amendment more fully supports the industrial zoning outside an area of city impact. We made sure that we worked closely with Richard Beck and the planning staff to ensure our application aligned with this new text. As you've heard, the proposed use for the site is for a sawmill that will cut, prepare, treat, and store railroad ties that will be used by Union Pacific Railroad. This includes a wood treatment and mining facility, 2 support buildings for employee restrooms, break rooms, offices, vehicle parking, and access. Along with our other applications, we are also requesting a variance to allow the use to be outside of an enclosed structure and without full screening. While I understand that that goes to the board, I would like to explain that the preparation and storing of the railroad ties, it all takes place outdoors. Railroad ties must be seasoned properly before being treated with an oil-based preservative. The process to season railroad ties is called air seasoning and is accomplished by stacking ties in a manner permitting air to flow freely around and between each tie. Ties being air seasoned are held in stacks until they reach the proper moisture level, and this process takes several months. This project, as you know, includes the extension of railroad tracks that would come off of the Union Pacific Railroad main line and directly onto the site's tie storage areas. The fencing requirement could hinder workflow and access to the storage areas and potentially affect the airflow to the ties. The site is situated in an area that is away from substantial residences, businesses, and amenities. The granting of that variance would not change the project's consistency with the intent of the ordinance nor grant special privilege to our client. Due to the site not falling within an area of city impact, the Ada County Comprehensive Plan is applicable, and our application does comply with the Ada County Comprehensive Plan. The details explaining how have been outlined by staff and are included in the staff report. In addition, our application also does comply with all applicable county ordinances and Ada County Court sections. Horrocks and our client have reviewed all conditions of approval and are happy to abide by them all. We understand that these include submitting a landscape plan, a lighting plan, detailed parking plan, obtaining building permits, and working with Central District Health, and more. Online, we have the Ameritized President, Jeff Thompson, and their engineering manager, Jace Jones. While I'm not an expert in railroad ties, they definitely are and are probably going to be answering the majority of the questions you may have. We are here tonight to humbly request a recommendation of approval to the Board of County Commissioners. And with that, we'll stand for questions. Thank you.
Any questions of the commissioners? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so do we have a Jace Jones online?
Yes, one moment, please. So, Jace Jones, you should be able to speak now.
I believe that's part of the applicant team.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So I gather, Mr. Letson, just as a matter of procedure, it's up to us whether or not we go ahead and let the applicant have the time. I mean, 15 minutes has not been taken, but we normally just have one speaker, but in this case,
Yes, correct, Chairman, Commissioners. An applicant group can request that you split up their time amongst multiple speakers. So if Jace or the other gentleman online had anything to add, it's at your discretion to allow them to add it. Otherwise, I think the applicant testimony could be closed.
okay, so I will ask the commissioners, are there any objections to allowing the applicant to go forward and divide their time? So we're ready to proceed then.
So, Jace Jones or Jeff Thompson, whichever of you wishes to speak first.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Jeff Thompson, the president of Ameritise. Thank you for your time tonight, Commissioners. And I guess we really don't have a formal presentation other than what our engineer from Horrocks has already presented. Our presence here is just primarily to answer questions that the commission may have that was not unable to be answered in our applicant presentation. So obviously we've come over and I'm located in Salem, Oregon. We've researched and done some due diligence, found this property, talked with the local planning, the Ada County Planning Commissioner, Richard Beck, and explained what we wanted to do, and he thought it was a viable proposition. We're looking at expanding our operations and building a new tie facility in Idaho. We currently operate two facilities, one in Hope, Arkansas, and the other one in the Dalles, Oregon. And we were hoping to expand here in the near future with a third facility for production of railroad ties. I'm not sure what else to address at this point in time, but we'd happy to answer any questions we have or that you may have.
Okay, Mr. Thompson, I'll turn it to the commissioners, but will you please give us your address for the record?
Okay, I'm located at 3865 Wolverine Street Northeast, Salem, Oregon, 97305, and that would be the same address for Mr. Jones.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any questions of the commissioners for Mr. Thompson? So, Mr. Thompson, I do have a question relating to, again, what Idaho Fish and Game was saying. I gather what their concern is whether or not the preservative that is applied to the railroad ties is something that's going to be airborne, that would blow to other properties and potentially risk threatening the threatened species that's over there. How is the preservative applied? Is it something that's airborne? I understand what was said before, where you're stacking them up, but tell me how that works.
Okay, the short answer, sir, is that the process does not, the preservative is not applied airborne. We essentially, the way our process works is ties will be purchased from sawmills within the Pacific Northwest of all indigenous species up here from the Northwest, primarily Douglas fir. Those ties will be brought to our facility, regraded to the railroad specs. Some operations done to them, cutting and trimming to make their appropriate size, whatever. Machining will need to be done to the wood to make it fit into the railroad operation.
At that point in time, it goes up into a stack of material, a rectangular stack, 49 pieces, for air drying, and that process will take 6 to 9 months. And we're just sitting there letting the ambient conditions draw the moisture out of the wood. Once it's dry enough, those ties are transferred to our treating process, which is totally enclosed within a process vessel. The ties are set on little carts that roll on track, and those are pushed into a autoclave, which I'm gonna simplify as it's like a big pressure cooker it has a door that opens and closes. So once we get the material in, we close the door, and the treating process is totally enclosed within that vessel. Takes 8 to 10 hours to process dry ties, and then at that point in time, once we have done the treating process, it's a batch type operation. The door of the pressure vessels open back up. We pull the treated ties out and remove them from the trams that move material in and out of the cylinder, and then the tie that has the preservative impregnated into it by the pressure process is then either stored on our site until which time the railroad has need for it, or most likely is loaded directly into a rail car and will be shipped off site within, let's say, 72-hour period.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Appreciate the thoroughness of that explanation. Any other questions from
I do.
Commissioner Retzlaff?
How many railroad ties do you treat at a time in that container?
Currently, I've got, once we define the size of the container, I'll give you an example of what we do in our facility here at the Dalles, Oregon. We run 735 ties per charge per autoclave, and at this particular facility, we may at one time have two cylinders. So, Jace, you did the engineering. You have a count of what we figured per charge?
Yeah, I believe we were running right about, I think we're going to be closer to about 800 ties. Our pressure vessels were going to be a little bit bigger than they are at our facility in the Dalles. So roughly 800 ties per cycle, two pressure vessels or autoclaves. So in any given 8 to 10 hour period, we could produce up to 1,600 railroad ties.
And how many of these containers are going to be on this site?
2 of the pressure vessels where the treating process occurs.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, I do have.
Yes, Commissioner Scott.
What kind of waste product does this facility create, as well as how do you handle that waste product? You say you're cutting wood. What do you do with the waste product wood, as well as any kind of chemicals or anything like that need to be disposed of?
Okay, thank you for your question. Excellent. The waste products, obviously coming from the first step of the process of manufacturing, we're dealing with sawdust and end trims off the material. Typically, those products are collected through dust collection systems and either recycled into another use product, particle board. Sawdust can go to pellet fuel if it's convenient. Some people use it for, bedding and horse farm corrals and stalls. The solid wood, most of that goes home with our employees for firewood, or either, it's sent for again, another reuse into a secondary market. Any of the waste product that comes out of the chemical operation in the treating side of it, those are managed under the RCRA laws of EPA and the current whatever state statutes are. Most of those are collected and sent as disposed of as hazardous waste. Our goal is to have like a zero discharge plant, when I say a discharge, meaning that none of our waste streams end up out into landfills or into the environment that is not properly managed.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Anything else? All right. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Jones, do you want to speak separately?
No, I don't need to.
All right. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Is there anyone in attendance here today that wishes to speak to this project? Seeing no, Ms. Branding, do you have anything else to add?
I have nothing else to add.
All right. Anything else? Okay, no. So it looks like we'll close this public testimony portion of the meeting, and we'll look for a motion one way or the other on this matter.
Chairman Birch.
Commissioner Exton.
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein in the testimony from the public hearing, I make a motion to recommend approval of project 202300172 CPA-ZC-DA-V-CU-MSP, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A and the master site plan dated January 18th, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Exton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Retzlaff has seconded. Commissioner Exton, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first off, I think that was the longest project title I've ever read, so first time for everything. But I mean, this land use, the rezone and everything, it seems like a perfect fit for this piece of land and the use that they want to do. You know, the industrial having access to rail, they're literally building off of the rail line that's next to it and all of that. And it seems very low impact. There's not a lot of residential near it. You know, seems very thought through as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Exton. Any other comments by the commissioners? Commissioner
Mr.
Retzlaff?
Chairman? Yes, I'd just like to say that was a great explanation as to this air treating and seasoning of these railroad ties. And it doesn't appear to me from this explanation, and I'm sure there'll be some, inspections out there as to how they treat this wood and preventing any danger to the environment. So I thank these gentlemen for giving me that explanation, as I am unfamiliar with treating of the railroad ties.
Anything else from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Scott.
I just want to highlight that I appreciate any kind of movement that brings jobs to the valley. And this obviously, whether it's 5, 10, 50, it does bring a new avenue for employment. And that's why I'll be voting in favor of it. So I do appreciate them considering Boise and our area here for the future usage of manufacturing.
So it was a great presentation, both by the applicant and staff. So I guess we're ready to vote on the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and there's no one opposed. So the motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is item 202-30119-S-PR-FP. And Ms. Haynes, we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for waiting. Chairman and Commissioners, project number 2023-01199-S-FP-PR is a preliminary plat, floodplain, and private road application to create a two-lot subdivision. The property is located at the southern end of South Charlie Horse Lane, which is an approved private road and contains approximately 10 acres in the rural to urban transition district. The property is located west of Eagle city limits, east of Star city limits, and north of Meridian city limits. The property is within Eagle's area of city impact. Most of the surrounding property is low-density residential and agricultural uses. The applicant has applied for a 2-lot subdivision, each containing 5 acres. Most of the property is within flood hazard zone AE, which is why the floodplain application is attached to this project. The application is also extending South Charlie Horse Lane so that a cul-de-sac turnaround terminates in Lot 2, the southern lot, giving adequate frontage to both lots. During the review of the property and application, staff found that there were 2 unpermitted structures. One is an approximately 2,880 square foot barn that was built between 2005 and 2007. There are also some ground-mounted solar panels that do not have a building permit that were put up recently. Before final plat approval, these structures and any other structures over 200 square feet will need retroactive permits. There were no comments from neighbors received for this application, and there were no agencies that raised objections to the application, though, like said before, all unpermitted structures over 200 square feet will need retroactive permits. Additionally, Ada County Highway District submitted a comment on Tuesday, August 8th, that was not able to be included in the initial published exhibits and will now be known as exhibit number 27. ACHD did not raise any objections to the application and are not requiring any additional conditions. Staff finds that the application complies with Ada County Code and recommends approval to the commission, and this presentation will be known as exhibit number 28, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Are there any questions from the commissioners to staff? Looks like no, so thank you very much. We'll now call the applicant forward and ask them to state their name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Ben Brunhauser, address 593 South Charlie Horse Lane, and I am the owner. It's pretty cut and dry as far as the unpermitted structures. The main one was the shop, which was built in 2006. I'm actually the fourth owner of this property, so it's been news to me. The solar panels, I did install those. Elite Solar Company installed those. I'll be tracking them down to get that done. And then the other structure, the Connex, is mine, and I'll do that. But other than that, I think we'll try to move ahead.
All right, are there any questions for the applicant? There are not. Thank you. Anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak to this matter? All right, we'll close the public testimony portion of the meeting and call for a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Scott.
based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I recommend the commission approves project number 202301199-S-FP-PR, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A and preliminary plat received on June 22nd, 2023.
Thank you, Commissioner Scott. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Colson has seconded. Mr. Scott, would you like to speak in favor of your motion, please?
I just think that moving from one building on 10 acres to two on 2 5-acre plots is not much of an impact. I do appreciate the applicant coming forward and explaining the building situation there. Having dealt with solar companies, I fully am aware of the permitting, how they ignore permitting often. So I have no problem with this. I think it doesn't really change a whole lot. No neighborhood comments, so I'm motioning to approve it.
All right, any other comments by the commissioners? Commissioner Colson?
I just see that it fits the area pretty good. I think it's a good idea on exactly what we're talking about on splitting it to two lots. And I do appreciate staff going back and having them redo the building permits and cleaning everything up. So That's all I got.
Thank you, Commissioner Colson. Any other comments of the commissioners before we call for a vote? All right. All those in favor of the motion that's been made, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye, and there is no one opposed. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item number 202-301154-CU-MSP. And Mr. Letson, it looks like we're turning the time over to you for the presentation by staff.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Thanks to Amelia for pulling double duty as our clerk and presenter tonight, so it's a lot of things to juggle. All right, so Chairman, Commissioners, the item before you is a conditional use and master site plan for an event center. The applicant is Terry T. King Landscaping Architecture, representing the Rusty Bucket Barn. The subject property is a 36.6 acre parcel located at 6381 West Amity Road. Surrounding uses include large agricultural tracts of land and rural residences. It's very near the Canyon County border, and I have no aerial imagery for that, so I put a label there, Canyon County. So generally, that's where we're at. The event center will consist of a 5,408 square foot barn, multiple patios, ponds, terraces, landscape gardens, and open fields. The main parking area will include 48 parking spaces. There will also be an overflow parking area with 35 additional spaces. And just to orient you to that, here is the barn area. Parking areas are up front.
I don't think you're sharing your screen.
Gosh, you guys.
You were being nice.
Thank you. I was ready to go because I think we can get out of here by 8:30 if we play our cards right. So, all right. Who wants to go back and see the map of Canyon County that doesn't exist? So this is Canyon County. This is a general proximity of, or general location of the project. Again, we have no aerial imagery of Canyon County. So here is the actual project itself. In the center is I don't think you can see my cursor very well, sorry. This is the barn, proposed barn event center area. You've got several patios and terraces around that barn area, multiple parking sites, an overflow parking area here, and another parking area up front. All existing structures on the site have been removed with demolition permits. So just to let you know, it is a vacant property. Here's a proposed landscaping plan. So you can see they've worked to screen the main event areas and parking areas from adjoining properties. This landscaping plan does comply with Ada County Code. I've got some renderings of the proposed barn that will serve as the event center space. In terms of comments, we received none from the public. All reviewing agencies and departments did approve the project with standard conditions. You did have a late exhibit from Ada County engineer. So we will incorporate those recommendations from the engineer as conditions of approval. They're very standard in nature, basically grading and drainage need to be accounted for, that sort of thing, so nothing out of the norm. And then Nampa Meridian Irrigation District also provided a letter after our written comment period, and all that does is essentially identify the easements for existing laterals on the property. Applicant and I have already talked about complying with Nampa and Meridian Irrigation District and the construction and build out of the project, and they seem to be able to pull that off. We will also include that by reference in the conditions of approval. So with that, I am recommending approval of the project and will stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff? For staff? No? Thank you very much, Ms. Letson. We've got 3 people listed for the applicant. We've got, looks like Cody Bills, Curtis Bills, and Terry King. So are you wishing to divide your time, or is one person going to speak on behalf?
We'll divide. We'll split in 2.
Okay. Any objections by the commissioners for splitting it? Sounds like no. So please come forward and state your name and address, and then give your presentation.
Good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Cody Bills. I reside at 5060 South Locust Grove Road in Meridian, Idaho. Thank you for your time tonight and considering our approval for our application. My husband and I are both Idaho natives, just to give you a little bit of background, and we live just 4 miles from the project that we are applying for. When we stumbled upon this beautiful piece of property, it inspired us to dream up this plan that we're proposing tonight. When we walked around, we saw there sitting an old barn, rusty farm equipment, and even an old Ford truck that has a tree growing through it, which is actually going to be incorporated into our venue space. So we decided that it needed to be a place of memory making and new beginnings. Curtis and I have worked extremely hard in our careers. We have 4 boys, and it was our aspiration to create a family-run business that would leave a legacy not only for our own family, but for the community as well, especially the ever-growing Meridian area. And upon researching rustic and country setting wedding barns and venues, we noticed that leaving Ada County in most cases is the only option, with limited capacity and a lack of modern amenities. So we want to help that. So it is our hope and dream to provide a space for private weddings and family gatherings forever and let others partake of this beautiful country land. And our surrounding neighbors were very supportive in our public neighborhood meeting, and they share in that vision with us. And I'll pass it over to my husband, Curtis.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bills, if you'll also just give your full name and address.
Excellent. Thanks, Chairman, Commissioners. Curtis Bills, I live at 5060 South Locust Grove in Meridian, 83642. This property 6381 in the 6381 West Amity Road in 83687. Hard to follow Cody, my impressive wife. She touched on a lot of the points. I get the opportunity to share with you a little more detail on the investment behind it. Cody and I are not mass developers. We don't have experience building out subdivisions. But what we do have is an extensive background in managing facilities and being able to have a vision for this family business. We've assembled what I would consider the Avengers, a project team of professionals. So it's not just Cody and myself that are going after this. We have civil engineers in Terry King and Richard Kramer, also landscape architects. We have our building architect, Jason Tomlinson. We went through Pat Teeley, a well-known person in the area, for this survey. We have Landon Brown as our property attorney from Holly Troxley. Ryan Hells is our general contractor from Brass and Hammer, and then Mike Martin from Avalon for our landscaping. I'd like you to walk through the renderings of our property to show additional kind of vision of the investment that we have. Landscape is a big part of this, and really appreciate the project team to really put together our vision in these renderings. So this is as you come into the property, and then Liana, if you could kind of scroll through it. You'll come up to the barn, a new structure, as was mentioned, 5,500 square feet of indoor space. There's water features throughout, as well as a pond. And as Cody mentioned, just some charm on that property from a Ford truck that has a tree growing through it. So you'll go through it. You'll see the structure on the back side of the barn. It overlooks the Awahis, and it has, on a good clear day, an incredible view of farmland as well as the Awahi Mountains. This is the overview of the property. As you can see, a tremendous investment, not only from the visual and experience, but also just from preserving the area that it is in. You'll see that the larger land that we own is over 36 acres, and the location of this property, this project, is intentional in the middle of the property. There are additional areas where views could be potentially better on the elevation, but this area puts us in a place where, in that partnership with the neighbors, as well as just building a barn, we really feel strong that this is the right place to build this barn. If you go to the last couple pictures, you'll see kind of that larger property there, and the neighbors to our south, as well as to all sides. The closest neighbor is nearly 1,000 feet from us. So with that, we're excited about this opportunity and really feel like, as all of you interested and invested in Ada County and being south in that back corner, as Leon explained, where it's right there, kind of the anchor of Ada County, what a great opportunity to bring in a venue such as this. And so with that, I'll stand for questions, or I don't know how to end.
Are there any questions that the commissioners have? Commissioner Retzlaff, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many people does this facility hold at one time?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. Up to 250.
Up to 250?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many parking spaces do you have? Because it kind of looks small, but I can't really tell.
Yeah, that's one thing that really highlights. So the plan for parking meets all requirements. If I can refer back to my team of Avengers, they'll give me the exact number, but it definitely supports 250, and it's all the ADA requirements,
Good.
both inside and outside of the property.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Is it okay to ask
Absolutely.
for a number of parking?
Sure.
Total of
81?
yeah, I think there's 40 and 20, yes, we had, I think, 81 total.
Yeah. Yeah, 81 with the option of overflow, if my number's right, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Scott.
What are your plans for that wide open space that's not part of the development? You have a lot of acreage on either side. Are you just planning on leaving it fields, or you have other plans for that as well?
Yeah, what was that? Was it Mills or something you said, or?
The field.
Oh, the field, I'm sorry.
Fields on either side, because, yeah, you placed it in the
Yeah.
center, and that's great, but what are your plans for all that open space on either side? Is it just going to stay open space, or you have other plans for it?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. I currently try to run 10 acres that I live on today. And so we dabble in a little bit of farming. This property that we have today is in partnership with John Vanderwoo, who is also in attendance today. He runs the farmland, and there is no plan to change that. The plan is to build a revenue venue and prevent a future subdivision. But right now it is alfalfa on about 10 to 15 acres, and there are cattle that graze on the other pieces of the land.
Okay, so you're just going to keep it kind of just.
Keep it as is.
Farmland
Yep.
or grow something there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And potentially, down the road, look into what's next. I don't know. It all depends on the success of this venue.
Then just one other question.
Sure, Commissioner Scott.
Did you have a neighborhood meeting, and what was the outcome of that?
Yeah, we had an incredible neighborhood meeting. We went out on the property. I personally drove around, invited the neighbors, as well as we sent out letters to everybody within the area. And we had over 20 people show up. We had chairs, we sat around a table, showed pictures, talked about the community and kind of the barn structure, and had really, really positive reviews, both at the meeting as well as in my individual stops at the houses.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Any other questions? So I do have a question. I'm reasonably familiar with this piece of property.
Okay.
It's a beautiful piece of property. Now, it does slope, as I recall, to the south
Yep.
from Amity. And so the event center itself will not be level with Amity. Is that correct? It will sit below the level of Amity. Is that right?
Yes, as you approach kind of like those pictures, as you approach, obviously landscape, and then the drop of the land puts us in a place where the barn is lower than the entrance.
Yeah. It is a beautiful piece of property. I've admired it for many years.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions of the applicant? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to this project? Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is John Vanderwater at 5311 Ridgewood Road. The
former owner of this property. If I'd have known you were that interested in it, I could have had two people bidding on it instead of just one. I might have got a little more money for that property. It was the nicest piece of property of all the property I had there. I had 100 acres, but this was the nicest piece of property that I had with there. And I just want to compliment the Bills. I couldn't be happier with the project that they're proposing and what their land use is on that property. When you sell property that, you know, my 65 acres borders that. Matter of fact, the creek is now the border. When you sell it, you always wonder, what's the person going to buy that property? What are they going to do with it? And is that going to affect my lifestyle and stuff like that? I do lease the ground back, so it didn't affect my lifestyle at all. And I think he's going to make that ugly part in the middle look a lot better than what I've done with it. I used to have a mobile home on there, and my son lived in it for a while, and then he moved out, and I rented it out. And Cody and them said they had to take the mobile home off before they could get financing. So apparently, Farm Credit doesn't like mobile homes on farm ground. It is a really nice piece of property, and I really like the design that they have put into it. And so I just say I couldn't be happier with the people who bought it and with their plans for the property. I don't know how much longer I want to keep farming the property. I know Mr. Bills asked if I wanted to farm his 10 acres that's 4 miles down the road, and I declined that. But I do run cattle on that and some hay ground and pasture on that. And that'll probably stay for a while, the way I see it, and I think the same way they see it, so.
Thank you, Mr. Matterwood. Any questions of the commissioners of Mr. Letson before we go to a motion? Seeing none, I think we are ready for a motion. Commissioner Retzlaff, were you?
No.
Commissioner Scott?
Okay. Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained here and in the testimony from the public hearing, I recommend the commission approves project number 2023-01154 CU-MSP, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A and the master site plan.
Thank you. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Scott, or Commissioner Scott, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I really like what they're doing here. I think this is a need in this part of the valley. We see a lot of these go up near the foothills, but pushing one into South Boise and finding a piece of land that works so great in South Boise, or not necessarily South Boise, but in the southern portion of Ada County, really is going to enhance the region. And I say it every time, but it's always wonderful to get members of the community to come in and show support. It actually does help. So this is my pitch to the 3 people that watch our commission meetings online. We love getting that positive feedback from members, so it does really help. So I absolutely wholeheartedly support this. It looks like an amazing project, and as a resident of South Boise, I look forward to seeing this go up.
Any other comments for the commissioners?
I mean, all I would say is I am pleasantly surprised and slightly shocked that there is not a single opposition to a club, lodge, or social hall. I think this is the first time in my tenure on this P&Z commission that there's been zero opposition, only support.
We really need it over there, Bass.
Yeah, and in that regard, I will just add to what Commissioner Exton has said. This property is unique, how it's situated, and the limited impact that it would have on surrounding properties. And the event center is basically going to be kind of in the middle of the property. And right now, I presume that you're going to leave many of the trees that are there in place. Is that correct? Because they certainly add to the beauty of the property. It really is a unique piece of property. I'm excited to see it staying the way that it's going to, or see it being developed the way it's going to be to preserve the unique character of it. It's exciting to see it. All right, the motion has been made and seconded, and we're ready for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye, and no one's opposed. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. The next item that we have on the agenda is item number 202-301321-Z0A. And it looks like, Mr. Letson, you're up again.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The item before you is a zoning ordinance text amendment, and Ada County is the applicant again. So the purpose of this text amendment, very similar to something you recently saw for industrial districts, we're actually doing the same thing for commercial districts, which is essentially allowing them in areas or properties outside of areas of city impact on a limited basis. So again, this is amending our commercial base district section and to kind of clarify that those are allowed. Again, we have a few of those that already exist, but given some recent applications, we thought a clarification would make a lot of sense. So section 1, this is the strike-through version of the language, but to summarize, again, we're allowing on a limited basis commercial uses and zoning districts outside of areas of city impact. Again, I'll get to kind of why that matters to some people, in particular the city of Boise later on, as to what this will take to actually accomplish if someone requests this. We are going to, again, require that almost any principally permitted use will be processed as a conditional use permit, even if it were a permitted use in the commercial-based district inside an area of city impact. So, for an example, someone wants to do I'm trying to think of a permitted use in the commercial zone. Someone wants to do a fuel station. If it's inside the area of city impact, that could be an allowed use right now. If it's outside, it's going to be conditional, so it will be in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we'll add those additional criteria that we have to consider for conditional use and deciding whether or not that's the right use. So kind of adding a little higher bar for those requests outside of areas of city impact. I can walk you through all of the table of allowed uses if you like. It's pretty exciting if you like old school bar graphs, but basically these are our commercial districts, and you'll see blank means it's prohibited, a C means it's conditional, A means it's accessory. So I'll zoom down to one here, amusement or recreation facility indoor. So if someone were to request C2 zoning out on a property outside an area of city impact, it has a special denotation, P1, which says you have to get a conditional use in order to have this approved. Whereas if they were inside an area of city impact, it's just permitted. So that's the important distinction to make, is permitted uses you guys never see. They usually are just processed by staff and out the door with a building permit. Now we're gonna say you've got to come to a public hearing to request that use because this is a different area. It's not inside an area of city impact. And why that's important is services are usually more available inside areas of city impact. You have better water, sewer access, quicker response times for fire and emergency services. Outside of areas of city impact, those utilities and services aren't usually there. So that's why we want to be very careful in saying yes or no to these types of uses, again, outside of areas of city impact. So I feel like I've said area of city impact about 1,000 times during this presentation, but so finally, we haven't received any comments from the public. All of our reviewing departments and agencies weren't opposed or supported the request. As mentioned before, City of Boise was an exception. Their concerns, they see this as basically could result in long-term adverse impacts to the community and its resources, result in costly and unplanned investments in infrastructure, and as they see it, inconsistency with the comprehensive plan, which funny enough would be our own comprehensive plan, which does support these types of uses outside of areas of city impact. So anyways, we're in a little disagreement with Boise on this one. I think to alleviate some of their concerns, which I attempted to do in multiple conversations and explaining how this would work, if you're going to establish commercial zoning outside of an area of city impact, you're not only going to be requesting a conditional use, most likely, you're going to be amending our comprehensive plan, similar to some things you've seen tonight. You've got it, that's a pretty high bar. You're going to actually request a change in zoning, also pretty high bar. You're going to have a development agreement, which has very specific details as to how this is going to work, and if you break the rules, how you basically your use goes away. And then on top of that, yeah, you'll have the conditional use as well. So that's 4 very intense public hearing level applications that almost always are going to get thrown at any request for this type of thing. So in that regard, staff, although we appreciate Boise's concern, we don't necessarily, we're not as concerned because it's going to have to run the gauntlet of our zoning code in order to get approved out in these areas outside of city impact. So with that, we are asking you to recommend approval of this to the board. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions of the commissioners for Mr. Letson? So I do have a question relating to the concerns that Boise has raised. As I read their objections, they seem to me to be saying in part was, we have planned for development within our city, and we've planned for infrastructure for it, and we want these developments basically funneled to us. So we're not competing with other locations within the county. So if I am a developer and I'm coming along with some commercial project, City of Boise is saying, I want that commercial project, if it's going to be anywhere close to the City of Boise, to come to the City of Boise so we can fit that puzzle piece in to what we have already planned and developed, rather than giving the developer the choice to be able to go outside into Ada County itself and perhaps get what the developer views as a better deal, and instead cheat us out of having that development within our city, where they don't mention, I don't think they mentioned the taxes, but they did mention that basically that infill would support what their plans are. And so when I read that, I was somewhat sympathetic to what they were saying, and that is, if I am a developer, even though I may have to run through a gauntlet to get it approved outside the county, if I'm looking at, well, I'm thinking, here's what Boise is going to do to me, I would shop it. I would check to see what it's going to take to do that development in Boise, and then I would check to see what I could find by way of property in Ada County itself, outside of Boise, to see if that would be easier, less expensive, and less restrictive. And so given that, given the concern that Boise has of, I don't want developers, commercial developers, shopping outside the city limits to find another place for their development, even if they do have to go through multiple steps. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think that's a valid concern, and I think that is probably a situation we might find ourselves in at the staff level. You know, someone saying, hey, I do this in Boise, but they have all these standards that you guys don't have, so how can I get it done with you? I will say that Boise and Ada County are aligned in focusing growth inside of areas of city impact for the most part. And you know, I think we've got this initial run at what this table is going to say yes or no to. That could be further refined as maybe we start to field some of these requests. Are like, that clearly needs to be in a neighborhood. Like, we're not building that thing out, you know, by the railroad tracks, that whatever, you know, like a convenience store or something like that. Like, those are things that we want to see pushed into areas where infrastructure exists, rooftops exist, that sort of thing. So again, I share Boise's concern on that level, but I also believe in staff and this Planning and Zoning Commission and our board to ultimately decide, hey, is this truly in support of our comprehensive plan? Are we truly going to amend our comp plan to allow this to happen? Like, I think it gives us some control over the properties that are in our jurisdiction. But, you know, back to the original point, focusing growth inside of areas of city impact and adjacent to city limits where annexation makes sense, we are on the same page. I would say we're only doing this to kind of allow for some of those commercial uses that could exist out in unincorporated areas outside of areas of city impact. So again, we might refine this table even more to say there's a whole handful of these that just should never happen out here, and we're going to take them off the table. But for right now, the process I laid out of the comp plan amendment, zone change, development agreement, and conditional use, we feel like there's enough layers there that someone's going to have to pass through multiple hearing bodies to get something done, that we feel confident that we can do a good job with this.
And so just to follow up with a couple of other questions. One, it surprised me, and maybe it shouldn't have, that as detailed of a letter as Boise sent an objection to this, there's nobody from Boise here. Is it unusual? I mean, in my experience, now over 4 years on here, I cannot remember a municipality showing up when they've objected to something and saying, hey, we're here in person to tell you why we object to it. Should I have been surprised that nobody from Boise?
Funny enough, we had Caleb Hood from City of Meridian talking about a project with our board last night because they did care that much about the project. So it does happen, but it doesn't happen a lot. Okay. You know, I think we're all trying to play the game together and not step on each other's toes. We appreciate Boise's letter, and I think they make valid points. And I think those are points that can be addressed through the multiple processes that I shared with you, as well as any future conditions of approval or just an outright denial of a request. But my problem with the letter from Boise is it doesn't trust that Ada County can get it right, and doesn't give us a chance to go explore these things. And I think there are some uses, both commercial and industrial in nature, that are appropriate in areas outside of city impact. Again, I think there's going to be probably another refinement to this table of things that we say can happen out there. But for the initial effort, we're saying, on top of all the other things you got to do, it's also a conditional use, which you guys deal with those almost exclusively because that's per how we've written code here. You're looking at adverse impacts. You're looking at the ability, compliance with the comprehensive plan, different things like that truly might impact surrounding properties. So that's why we think adding a CU to this is, in addition to all the other stuff, a really important part of it.
So if this is approved and then an application comes before us, it'd be like any other application. It could be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. In fact, may have to go to the Board of County Commissioners, right?
Most likely will because of the comp plan and zone change and development agreement requirements.
And then like the city of Meridian showed up last night, the city of Boise could show up if they felt really strongly about it. I guess the issue for the city of Boise at that point is they may show up, but the real reason they object is because we want it within the city instead, and so it may not carry all that much weight with the Board of County
I
Commissioners,
guess
but even
you
so.
figure that out through the testimony provided. But again, I just want to circle back to we're not doing this to disagree with Boise. I think we in general want to focus growth in areas where services and infrastructure exist. I mean that's just good planning. That's what communities should do. But I think there are some uses that could work and don't quite meet that ACI requirement. In fact, our board approved an RV park recently that was right adjacent to an area of city impact, served by, a lot of different things. You guys saw it a couple times, I think. The board saw it a couple times. That's an example of one of those uses that directly adjacent to the ACI and ultimately was approved by the board. I think, there are certain opportunities like that I think we should clarify in our code can occur without, questionable interpretation of our code.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Retzlaff.
I would just like to ask Leon one thing. How many people showed up at your meeting, at the hearing that you had, the public announcement meeting? How many people showed up?
So for zoning text amendments, we don't do a neighborhood meeting because that's, it impacts the entire Ada County. So that'd be hundreds of thousands of people. So difficult to hold a neighborhood meeting for that. We did advertise this several times. We've transmitted to every agency and group around, all neighborhood associations. Anybody that we have a contact info for was sent this proposal. Only the city of Boise had an issue. Everyone else didn't have anything to say or was supportive of the project.
Any other questions of staff? All right, that being the case, I think we're looking for a motion.
Commissioner Birch.
Commissioner Exton.
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I move to recommend approval of the proposed amendment to Ada County Code Project Number 2023013210A.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Retzlaff has seconded. Commissioner Exton, do you want to speak in favor of your motion?
Sure. I think this is just another tool in Ada County's staff arsenal. And, like Leon said, just because this is approved here doesn't mean it's set in stone and the table can never change and things can't be moved around and refined further. As staff in the county have more, examples of the practicality of it playing out, and they can notice the trends of things happening in the county. For my job, I'm constantly changing all of my guidelines as more and more people call and ask different questions that I hadn't thought of. So I can definitely imagine, a round two of this coming down the line once there's more, kind of real world examples happening.
Any other comments from the commission? Looks like we're ready for a vote then. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
And I also say aye, and no one is opposed. Thank you very much. I think that concludes the portion of our meeting for projects. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from July 13th, 2023. So I'm looking for a motion to approve those minutes.
Chairman Birch,
Yes, Commissioner Exton?
I will be abstaining from the vote since I was not here at the meeting and I have not watched the video from that meeting.
Yes, and I see Commissioner Retzlaff is about
I will
to
be
do the same
abstaining,
thing.
Mr. Chairman.
As well as I.
And I see, so we only have 2 people in attendance that could approve those minutes. So I don't think we can approve them.
Yeah, I guess I would say if the majority left over is in agreement, I'd have to explore the quorum rules. You know, you could just table those minutes to the following hearing and give you guys a chance to go review that. And if you have
Yes,
any
please watch
questions-
the video. It's exciting.
I don't see any issue with tabling those minutes for another month to give you some additional time.
Okay.
Chair,
Yes. Commissioner
since I was present at the meeting, I recommend we table those minutes until the, what is it, September?
It'll be the September 13th
13th
hearing.
hearing.
And we can look for a second for that motion.
I'll second that motion.
All right, Commissioner Exton seconded. All those in favor of tabling the approval of the minutes until the next meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
I also say aye, and no one is opposed. All right, and so now a discussion about the last meeting of the Ada County Board of County Commissioners.
Yeah, thank
Mr.
you.
Letson.
So first off, congratulations, you beat the board in terms of timeout. They were done at 8:35 yesterday. You guys are trending towards 8:30. And you had 3 times the items that they reviewed. So there were 3 items heard, well, 4 technically, another one tabled. This is that subdivision out near McDermott. And Victory, it's been, you guys said yes to it, got tangled up with Health District and hasn't moved forward. That was tabled again. They're still exploring septic for that project. So the first item that was acted upon was a conditional use and master site plan, and as well as a variance for a contractor's yard and storage facility. This is out off of Amity Road. That was ultimately approved, 3-0, unanimously approved. Next item was a storage use. You guys saw this out there on Chinden near the proposed interchange with Highway 16. So that's where the City of Meridian did show up and actually spoke to its concerns regarding the project. Not necessarily opposed it, but wanted to make sure certain things were considered and possible conditions added. So that ultimately was tabled for 2 months based on a couple of things. They wanted the applicant to go explore things with the City of Meridian some more. They also wanted to get a final answer from the Idaho Transportation Department as to how much right-of-way they're going to need on Chinden, because the answers bounced back and forth and we couldn't land on a final design, which kind of makes it hard to attach a specific design to a development agreement. That's the purpose of the development agreement. So they tabled it to October to give the applicant some time to figure that out. And then the last item was Whiskey Ridge subdivision, if you recall that one, near, I believe, Highway 55, east of Highway 55, I think. Basin Way and Broken Horn. Gosh, why I always get my highways a little mixed up. It's either 16 or 55. But this was a 7-lot subdivision, 40-acre lots proposed. That was basically approved but tabled for some refined language concerning a road user maintenance agreement, because there is an existing property owner that takes access through the property, and the board wanted to make sure she had a chance to kind of weigh in on maintenance of the future private road and how all that would work. But in general, they did recommend approve, or did approve it. So, and that was only tabled to an open business meeting, not an actual public hearing. So with all of that, that's all the items I've got. Do you have any questions?
Wonderful. Any questions, Mr. Letson?
I'm kind of interested, like, I'm kind of surprised at that Meridian project, that storage facility. She made so many changes to that, and it still got tabled, and she was still sent back to Meridian. And they really didn't have a preference at the time.
Yeah, Meridian had, since you saw it, submitted a couple additional letters with some more direct language as to what they were concerned about. And then there's a large property owner that's directly south and east that also kind of moved from a position of, we're not opposed, but we have some things we want to figure out, to, hey, if you don't figure those things out, we're opposed. So that's why the board opted to give her some time to go sort it out with those groups and see if they could come up with something that worked for everybody, so.
Well, before we adjourn, I got to say, and our staff, for the most part, is gone, but there were sure a lot of people that were complimentary of how professional and courteous the staff was Basically, they held their hands through the process. And so, thanks to your people, I think that they do a wonderful job, and they really make the county look good. They make it look like the county cares about the people that are applying for these things. And I just thought it was so nice to see some of the compliments that were.
Almost everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's a real point of emphasis for us. I think the team does a great job. We really dig in on projects and try to help people understand what they're up against and how you get through it. Try to make it as simple as possible, but sometimes you can't. And in that situation, you just hold their hand until they get to the end of it. So thank you, but I'll pass that along to the staff.
And I can testify that to directly. So, I mean, you guys held my hand quite a ways for my own application. You guys did a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.
Mine was pretty complicated, so.
That's why we have jobs, so.
All right, there being no further business to come before the commission, I believe we're adjourned. There's probably some things for me to sign, I assume.
Yes.